Okay. Brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, and to those who are visiting here with us today, we are pleased to have Brother Doug Hamilton coming to us from Waco, Texas. Doug has been a Christian for many years, since 1988. He's married to Jana. He has 4 children and 4 grandchildren. Doug received his spiritual education at the Sunset Bible Institute International, and he also attended Southern Christian University. Doug has been preaching for 22 years, and he has written many books. He conducts seminars and workshops on different topics, especially on spiritual giftedness. We invite him to be here with us and to challenge and to motivate us on this particular area. So for the next half an hour or 40 minutes, we will be here listening attentively to Doug Hamilton from Waco, Texas, minister unto us on spiritual giftedness. Yeah.
Let me get this computer back on here. Wait, no, it's going to work. Got it. Thank you for having me up. I speak fluent Canadian now. No, I spent 2 months in Thessalon, Ontario this summer when it was 115 in Waco. And the Thessalonians were saying that, oh, it's the hottest summer in years. It was 84. And but it was humid. We're going to cover quite a bit during this time. And I think that this seminar is going to be something like you've never been to before. Because I can only bring so much up with me, if you want one of these guides electronically, let me know and just give me your email. I'll email it to you tonight. It'll be the entire seminar outlined for you. And you can print it off at home if you want, but this follows everything we're going to cover. And I want to kind of tell you how this came about. See, I was in the death care and funeral industry for many years. And I was actually a trainer for the state of Iowa for Lowen Group, which was a Canadian company, by the way, Ray Lowen. And my job would be to train people on how to read people and to be able, because everybody's not the same. Have you noticed that? Like, everybody's different. If you can't, people who can't read books, if you could read people, you'll have far more success than people who can read the thickest books with the least amount of pictures. I promise you. But what I noticed is, I'd been preaching for about 5 years, just as a layman to help the church out for a long time. But I started going through the Bible, and I said, you know, there's certain people in the Bible that match up with what I'm teaching. So I asked the company, hey, how much do you value my training? They said, well, yeah, we value it quite a bit. I said, well, will you let me do it the way I want to do it? They said, yes. So I use the Bible to train people. And so there's a lot of funeral directors walking around the country now that were trained in the gospel but learned how to read people using that. So when I went to Sunset, I was about to make a mission trip to Romania, and Gerald Payton, one of the professors, gave everyone a spiritual giftedness test to make sure that the team lined up, we complement each other. And I said, Gerald, I thought these are the same things that I was looking at here. We both looked at the same Bible, came to the same conclusion. That's how the Bible works, by the way. That's our commonality that we have. And so, from that moment on, I went to Osceola, Iowa, and I thought, I'm going to put together a spiritual giftedness course. At that time, we had 40 people in our congregation, a little tiny rural area in Iowa. That's where I grew up, was in Iowa. And we went from 40 to 120 in 18 months. Because what we're going to be covering here, even though it's more for equipping, there's no less than 500 people that I've baptized over the years just in that, just in America. We went to India one year, did it for 3 weeks in India, cucking out a school of preaching, went through the bush, coconut groves, banana groves, 380 baptisms using it. Next year we did it, 280 baptisms. You'll see why in just a second. But what happened was, Truett Adair, the director of Sunset, Sunset has 66 branch schools around the world. And Truett Adair asked me if I would go to some of these schools and teach for them. And so I would take, a month or two out of the year, go and teach in the schools. Well, what happened was, I was in Athens, Greece, and we were doing a course on church plants. And there was a 15-minute segment on spiritual giftedness. I'd already done 50 seminars on that already. And so I just ad-libbed it for 15 minutes. And the class liked it so much, they said, hey, how come we can't cover that? And I said, well, that has to be on the curriculum for the bachelor's degree. And so they went up to Benny Lika. I don't have that on, do I?
I don't think you do.
Okay.
It was a little bit better.
Anyway, but I had him going good, didn't I? Those techies you could throw off big time. I went to a bank teller one time. She got mad when I had to come in, but she went up, yeah, what can I do for you? I would like to take this amount of money and put in checking, and I'd like to put, She went, tum, 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 hello? And so when she was going, tum, 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 what, can you hear me? Yeah, finally, after about 2 minutes, she had me come in. Okay, there's something wrong with the mic. What do you need? I said, I thought she was going to close my account at that point. But I went upstairs to Benny Lika, the director of the school in Athens. He asked me a question. He said, hey, the students came up, they wanted you to teach spiritual giftedness, and you said they had to check the curriculum. And we do have that on the curriculum. Well, what happened was, he downloaded the curriculum from Sunset's website, and 3 years prior, Truett asked me if he could have a copy of my spiritual giftedness. And so I said, yeah, sure. And I gave it to him. Well, Benny handed it to me. He said, is this you, the Doug Hamilton? I said, yeah, that's my material. And I said, well, Truett said he wanted to borrow it. He didn't say he wanted to put it in 66 schools, because that was just my rough draft. And so what happened was, when I got back to Sunset, I had a meeting with Truett. I said, Truett, I don't mind you using it, but if you would have told me you were doing that, I would have done something more professional for that. He said, I hereby grant you the permission to write the book for Sunset. So this book was commissioned to write for Sunset for one of their courses, which is spiritual giftedness. You can get these on Amazon if you want, but I went ahead and brought some with me. And they're about probably half of what you'd pay on Amazon if you wanted one. This is going to follow everything. This is like a super seminar in a book. Has over 70 stories, over 500 Bible verses. So if you're interested, there are some books there. There's only a couple more of these outlines here. These are implementation guides. If you ever take somebody through a course, if you say, hey, you get somebody new coming to church, and you said, hey, have you taken a spiritual giftedness course? Guess what? 13 weeks. How many weeks in a quarter? 13. They can go ahead and take the whole course, and you use your book as a master book. But if you want one of these books, give me your email. I will email you an implementation guide, because they were getting heavy to carry through the airport. And so, spiritual giftedness. Let's get going on this. It's tonight, of course. These first two lessons we're going to cover. I wanted you to know the corporate and the personal value of spiritual giftedness, because you've come out here and you might get we'll be in the middle of it. I don't want you to ever forget why this is important to you. If you know why it's important to you, no matter where we're at in the course, you may get a brain fog or something, and all of a sudden you'll say, wait a second, why am I here? Because there's intrinsic, corporate, and personal values to know this information. I'm going to read you something that's in the implementation guide at the very beginning. It's drier up here. Okay. In May, it says 1996, Christian Schwartz, who wrote Natural Church Development, a great book. If you're a Flaming administrator, you'll love it. All kinds of numbers. He took the 8 principles. He took over 1,000 churches throughout the world. Not just churches of Christ, but churches that were growing. And he came up with 8 biotic principles of growing churches. The number 1 biotic principle of a growing church is empowerment of leadership. If there's not a culture to generate the next generation of leaders, that body is going to die. Second of all, right behind it is implementation of spiritual giftedness. In other words, people weren't focusing in areas that give them the greatest amount of joy. And so George Barna did a survey in February 9th, 2009. It further confirmed the neglect. This is the biggest area of neglect in the brotherhood of Christ. The topic was spiritual giftedness. They surveyed 1,006 people who described themselves as Christian. Out of 1,006 people, 684 of them said they had even heard of spiritual gifts. Now, of those 684, 224 said they had gifts which were not consistent of the Bible. Like, I have the gift of cleaning toenails or something ridiculous that's not even in there. 191 said, well, I don't have a spiritual gift. And 102 did not even know what their spiritual gift was. In other words, 16.6% out of 1,000 people who say, I am a Christian, were even on the right track. 16.6%. So we're going to major on the major. And you'll watch what happens. We're going to have a lot of fun. Trust. Is it okay if you have fun when you learn? Because I can talk like I'm from a Gothic time. And the Lord said, it's not going to be like that though, because I have a lot of fun when I teach. By the way, I had plane trouble. I didn't get in for a whole nother day late. Last night, the starter on the I didn't even know it had a starter. I was thinking like advanced auto, but we got on the tarmac and didn't get to leave for another 4 hours because the plane didn't take off. You might have heard this story, you might not have. There was this preacher. He was flying to Canada, to Edmonton to do a seminar. You might relate to that, but all of a sudden the mask all dropped and the plane was shaking and everybody was panicking. And the stewardess came out and said, is there anyone from the clergy that's here? And a preacher raised his hand and said, I'm a preacher. She ran over to him. She said, quick, do something ministerial. And so he passed the offering dish. But it won't be like that. But corporate and personal values. Let's go ahead and start out with this. Okay. First of all, 5 corporate reasons why you want to be up on your skills for spiritual giftedness. Here's a church building, of course, but look at the foundation. The 5 E's of a growing church. Evangelize, evaluate, education, encourage, equip. Without spiritual giftedness, remove that. You want your church to die? Remove that. It'll never carry on. For example, in Matthew chapter 28, verse 19 and 20, let's look at evangelism. Evangelizing. Matthew 28, verse 19 and 20, Jesus in the great commission, because he had a mission, and he co-opted it with some men called apostles. What did he say? Go ye into all, he says, make disciples of every nation. Baptize them, 2 participles, comma, baptizing them into the possession, istoonoma, into the possession of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe whatsoever things I commanded you. And lo, I'm with you even always to the end of the age. Another slice of the Great Commission, Mark chapter 16, 15, and 16. He says, those who believe and are baptized shall be saved. He said, take the gospel to all creation. We are commanded to share good news. God didn't save us to hog good news. And you know, if one of you found out they were giving free gas at a gas station tonight, well, no, petro, okay? Is it petro here or gas? We call it filling station. That's Texas. If there was a gas station that was giving away free gas for 1 hour tonight at 8:30 and you knew about it, would you might share that with somebody that you care? What's more important? A free tank of gas or your soul with God on that great day of resurrection? We've got to get our priorities straight. We're told to evangelize the entire world. We go from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, the uttermost parts of the earth. We turn the world upside down. Woe is me if I do not preach the gospel of Christ, Paul said. You see, when you try to evangelize somebody, when you can speak their language, it makes all the difference. By the way, if you're not a Christian, you had these passions before you even became a Christian. How many here liked pizza before they became a Christian? Come on, admit it. You like pizza? But then you were baptized into Christ. And then all of a sudden you said, I hate pizza. No. But you sanctify. Like Zechariah, everything was holy unto the Lord. You eat pizza in a different way. If there's 8 pieces and there's 8 people, how many pieces do you get if you love your neighbor? 1. But if you're a pig and you decide to eat 2 pieces, then somebody wasn't loved. You also don't get to be a glutton. It's not seafood. You saw it, you ate it, but you ate in a sense, like Job said in chapter 33, verse 1, I made a covenant with my eyes, I would not look upon the virgin. Wait a second. That's right. With a computer, you can go online and do all kinds of evil stuff. Tonight we can do a presentation. With your hand, you can pat the back of someone who's discouraged or smack them with the back of your hand. The hand isn't unholy, it's what you do with it. You had these passions before you ever became a Christian. My oldest daughter, Natalie, she was always, by the way, I knew what my kids' spiritual gifts were. I got 7 grandkids, by the way. I did once have 4, but now they keep coming. Have 7 grandkids, but I knew what all my kids' spiritual gifts were before they were even in school. I knew it. You're going to be able to identify what the 10 ministerial passions are. You're going to be able to identify it. I can tell you, 5 years from now, they won't refer to you as Fred and Chuck, but Flaming Prophet, you administrator. You're going to know them for who God made them. My daughter, Natalie, she was like that servant. She was a flaming servant. She'd always want to walk on my back. I have a bad back. Holds me back. But she would put lotion on my back, and as a little girl would walk on my back. She's always into service. And she's also into teaching. She taught my son, who's a dentist, she taught him to read when he was 3 and she was 5. As she was learning, she'd come home, set up her chalkboard, say, Andrew, come here. This is how you do it. He was winning reading contest. So I knew she was very gifted in teaching. She was very passionate about helping. And you know what she is now? She's the top trainer for a chain of restaurants, international restaurants. She has her teaching degree too, but she makes 3 times more than a teacher does. I knew what my kids, my children, by the time they went to college, They received $1.48 million of free education and scholarships. And I mean, they excelled. Because when you plug somebody in to what they're passionate about. Michael Jordan. Anybody hear of Michael Jordan before? Have you? Yeah. He was cut from his 9th grade basketball team. He was told, you're not good enough. But he had passion. It drove him. What did it drive him to do? To give up? No. He went to the gym. He kept shooting free throws, 500, 1,000 free throws, do all those moves, stick the tongue out, the windmill. His sophomore season, he never looked back. Don't confuse passion with talent. Passion, when plugged in, will always lead to talent. It's what you're passionate about. And so evangelizing, you can lead so many more people to Christ. I want to tell you about Paul Jordan. A lot of these stories will be in the book. There's a lot of them that you won't have in the book. But Paul Jordan, about 18 years ago, I was in Missouri doing this seminar. And there was this young man who came up to me. By the way, remember this. You have good memories? FindMySpiritualGift.com. That's the website that goes with this. Go online, take the test, give me the results, because I'll actually give you an entire congregational breakdown. I'll show you one of those reports. It's a powerful tool. See, with spiritual giftedness, normally in ministries, here's how it works. Hey, let's get this ministry and we're going to build these people around it. That's called a ministry without passion, and it dies. With spiritual giftedness, you build the ministry around the people that you have. It's like what Mama used to do. You'd say, there's nothing in this cupboard to eat. She'd shoo you out of the way. She'd open up the same cupboard, grab certain things, and voila, a meal. You can only work with what you have. And God doesn't give us an impossible task. This young man in his 20s named Paul Jordan came up to me. Everybody was taking their tests for their congregational data. He wasn't a member. He was a relative of somebody, his cousin. He came to the seminar and he said, hey, can I take the test? I said, absolutely. It's secular. He said, I'm not a Christian. I said, I know, but you will be. I said, you can take the test. It's secular. Excuse me. I had a water. It's back there. It's right over there. There it is. So he took the test. It came back, thank you. It came back #1, teacher. #2, servant. He said, what does that mean? I said, if you ever decide to become a Christian, Paul, you're going to love digging into the Word and finding those golden nuggets, and you're going to like helping people. I gave him a challenge. I said, Paul, this is what I want you to do. For the next 30 days, after I leave, I want you to pick one book of the Bible, which he did, book of Philippians. I said, read that book forward, backwards, inside, out, every which way you can. Know that book for 30 days. At the same time, go find people that need help and just help them for 30 days. At the end of those 30 days, if you don't see the joy you can have if you do become a Christian, then fine, go move on to something else. 3.5 months later, I still have the email from Paul Jordan. Got it late one evening. He said, Doug, I don't know if you remember me, but I was the guy who came, and I did remember him. He said, I tried that for a month, and I really had a lot of fun. I was helping widows and all kinds of people. And man, I read that book. It was great. So then I said, I'm going to try it another month. He kept helping people, and he picked another book of the Bible, the book of James. Servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered abroad, greeting. I mean, he had that book like memorized. He loved it. He said, I did it another month. I wrote you tonight. I wrote you tonight to tell you I was baptized in Christ. And you know what? This young man today, he's a deacon in the church. My own mom. I grew up in bars and nightclubs. You know what I did on Sunday morning? I cleaned the bar. That's what I did. I got to keep any money the drunks dropped. I grew up far from Christ. I became vehicleless, jobless, homeless, all in one day. Sometimes you got to be flat on your back before you're looking up to heaven. That's how I became a Christian. My mom, after I went to Sunset, I went back to Iowa because that's where I'm from. And I wanted to try to lead my family to Christ. And my mom, I remember a couple times, oh boy, gospel cut right to the core. And she was crying her eyes out one night. She says, I know I need to be baptized. I need that, but I still run a bar. And I can't, in all honesty, be in that type of work and be going to church on a Sunday. I had to say the hard thing to my own mom. I said, Mom, I'd rather you be honest and lost than to be saved and dishonest, because that won't last. So, roll forward to about 13 years. I'm in Pennsylvania. My mom retired from that, sold the last of her bars. She was always a great encouragement to me. A great encouragement. She started watching our services. She started watching our services in Pennsylvania every Sunday. She'd join us live and watch the services and always text me kind notes. I'd follow up with her with studies. And here's what happened. I could see she's number one encourager, parakaleo. She's like a walking group hug. And so I began showing her things that if you ever become a Christian, Mom, you're going to light up nursing homes. You're going to do stuff. You're going to change the world. So, 2.5 years ago now. No, it would be 3.5 years. Wow, time flies when you're talking about eternity, doesn't it? What happened was she was coming out for my 50th birthday. And she was near to the kingdom of God. She was the almost persuaded Christian. I told my congregation, I said, my mom's coming out. I think she's probably going to be baptized. That obstacle's out of the way now. And so I'd been giving her a gospel presentation filled with encouragement, her language. We were leaving the Super Bowl party for the church, and I was about to ask her again, Mom, I want to sit down and have a study with you. But before I can get the words out, we're in the car, it's snowing. She said, Doug, I have a question. I said, okay, what is it? She said, can I be baptized in Pennsylvania in a county in Iowa? Because that's where she lives. I said, what? Yeah, if I'm baptized in Pennsylvania, will God recognize that though I live in Iowa? I said, Mom, I want to tell you about that. I baptized her that night, every Sunday, no matter where I'm at. You know why I was in Thessalon preaching for 2 months? She joined us. She had her little Lord's Supper cups. Because your evangelism always works better when you know who you're working with. You're speaking their language. She was baptized into Christ, and she even has set up her little computer on Sunday mornings and has neighbors coming over and join her for worship. She's 1 hour from the nearest church of Christ. 1 hour. No matter where I'm at, that's her church family, though. Isn't that how it's supposed to work? What about another one, evaluating? We're told to evaluate. We are to weigh up the cost. We're expected to weigh up the cost. That's just how it works. Nobody is going to go to war and not weigh up the cost. You don't go build a tower or build a major project and not add up what it's going to cost. We're told to evaluate. Well, if you do not use spiritual giftedness, you can't evaluate properly. You can't do it. You'll get in all kinds of trouble. I had this lady when I first started working in Pennsylvania. She was a flaming, when I say flaming, that means out of the closet, there's no hiding it. Flaming mercy giver, servant giver. Her name is Karen DePofi. She gave me a call. She said, oh, hey Doug, I want to know, I know somebody, I have a friend who they have a friend and their kid is up at Hershey Hospital right now. He's really sick. I want to know if we could send them some money. I said, what's their name? I'll give them a call. I'll go have a visit and try to follow up. See, I'm evangelism. I want an opportunity to try to not give them a fish, but to give them a fish and teach them to fish. And to teach others also. Well, when I called up there, I called the young man and I said, yeah, I understand your sons and Karen said this. And I said, I just want to know if I can come up, maybe make a list of some stuff that you would need, have a prayer for you, and I'll follow up with you. He said, I don't want anything to do with church, just mail a check to this address. That didn't fly with me. So I just went back to the elders and I said, hey, Karen brought this up, but it's not probably a good investment at this point. When she found out, see, she's like, mercy giver. See, if you cried at the end of Old Yeller, you're a mercy giver. I'm not a mercy giver. I would have been the one to take Old Yeller out. Dog foam at the mouth in my house, dog's going down. But mercy givers, so sad. She got mad at me. She called a meeting with the elders. And she said, you're supposed to be a minister. You have to be compassionate. You got to have this. No, see, that's her view of it at that point. Now, if I didn't evaluate, if I didn't know what she was, I could have reacted in a terrible way. How dare you? But didn't do that. I'm looking at her saying, man, she has a tender heart. Wow, man, she loves to give, very sacrificial. And I explained to Karen. I said, Karen, this is what we look like. We were butting heads, but I just said, hey, sister, God didn't make us the same way. We're designed to work together. You know, most splits in the church, and I'll cover that in the open session, aren't because of, well, they chose this carpet, or you had there was a church in Pennsylvania that split when they brought the outhouse in. Can you believe that? Dumb as a box of hammers. But it was on spiritual giftedness, because they're looking at things differently. Tomato, tomato. I explained to Karen, you know what? You have one of the most merciful, compassionate hearts of anyone I met, and nobody understands sacrifice like you do. What if they would have said to you, if you called them up, and you wanted, imagine if you called them up and said, hey, I want to help you, and they said, no, I don't want any of your handouts. I don't want you doing anything nice for me. I want you to study the Bible with me and confront me. What would you do? She said, oh, I wouldn't want anything to do with that. I said, welcome to the world of spiritual giftedness. We became extremely very good friends. And I'm glad, because 8 years later, her son Chris, coming down a hill from school that day, his car left the road and he was killed instantly. And we became even greater friends. And that other son she had that hadn't darkened the doorway of a church for 20 years, he's a gospel preacher now. See, we got to evaluate. Got to have foresight. And if you don't know who you're working with, you're going to get into big trouble. Big trouble. I'm going to talk about you later, brother. You got a major signal here. Oh man. Just remember, brother. You're going to be, oh boy, I'm going to talk about you later. Oh man. You had some major tells going on there. Okay, let's talk about the next one. Educating. We're told to be careful about what we're teaching in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 16. That's exactly what Paul says. 4 verse 16, he says, pay close attention to yourself and what you're teaching. Well, most of the time we look at that and say, yeah, let's talk about false error. But you know the strategy that you teach with? This is what kills a lot of preachers in the Church of Christ. You know, I've evaluated entire preaching schools, Bible camps, medical missions. They all have a dynamic to them. If you go to a preacher school, I don't care where it is, your top 3 gifts are evangelism, teaching, and the prophet, the gift of confrontation. Well, what happens if there's 10 passions? If there's 10 passions and that guy just preaches what he wants to preach all the time, You got people coming to church every week that are starved. There was this lady named Sue Smith. She was in my congregation in Pennsylvania. And I was preaching on the Levitical sacrificial system. That's a pretty deep class. Okay? When you're covering all those sacrificial system and the atonement. And so we were going into some detail. But she was a flaming mercy giver. And she came up to me after 5 weeks. She said, Doug, when are you going to have one of those sermons that make me cry? I haven't had a good cry in a while. I said, oh, I got that coming up. I got a big old buffet. Imagine if you went into a buffet. All you could eat, and they have two things, liver, onions. How are you going to like that? Now, I like liver and onions. But most people don't. I can see by your noses you don't like it. But educate, when I go to preacher schools, I have the chart up there, and I show the preachers, listen, you need to make sure you do a rotational basis. Otherwise, you're going to have people going to a buffet with nothing to eat, and they're going to die because of it. It's so, so important that we educate. By the way, the whole strategy for the congregation, when you get a congregational report, when I leave, shortly after, when you turn in enough samples, I will produce a 10-page report with color graphs and everything, and you'll have the exact breakdown of what the congregation is. Well, you must first employ in strengths and then educate in weakness. Because as a man thinketh, so he is. You put it on the forefront of your mind. And so by educating, you can end up changing, making a huge difference for people. Here's another one. There's me in Kakinada, India. You can usually tell me when I go to India. I'm the one who's twice as big as them. But you know, I've been to preacher schools all over the world, and we track that, and the preachers that last the longest are the ones that don't get up and just preach what they want to preach on, what they're passionate about. That's great if everybody's like you, but as you'll see, only 9 to 10% have the ministerial passion of evangelism. Let me tell you about Brad Johnson, the stories in the book. He was the best man for my wedding. Brad Johnson and I knew each other. We became Christians around the same time, and I was always knocking doors. You know, I sold caskets door to door for a living and trained people to do it. It was so fun. You get the tape measure out, they cut. No, you don't do that. But I mean, when I put an ad in the paper, I said, the greatest sales job in the state of Iowa. They call me up. What is it? You're going to sell death care industry. What? It's fun. Because it was like Christmas to me every time I knock on a door. Oh, look at it. Who will come to the door this time? Johnny. I felt like Monty Hall was with me all the time. Well, Brad, we were setting up small home group Bible studies. This is before I was even a preacher. And he wanted to come out knocking doors. He's a flaming servant. Flaming servant. Last in evangelism. And he said, oh, I want to go out knocking doors with you. I want to go out knocking doors. I said, okay. All right, so we went into this neighborhood, knocked the first door. I knocked 5 doors to show him what it is. I give him techniques. I said, when you knock on the door, don't stand there fogging up the door, step off the step, you know, give him the pointers, what he needs. He saw the first one. They said they were coming to the small group. Second one, wanted a Bible study. Third one wasn't home. Fourth one, they were interested in a study. We were trying to get one. And the fifth one was a study. Now, this was in a trailer court. So you're going to get some rough spots in there. Brad said, oh, I want to try. I'll give you Brad Johnson's number. You ought to hear him tell the story. Oh, he still has digestive issues over it. He knocks on the door, and I stand back. I say, okay, go get him, Tiger. He got up there and knocked on the door, and he hears this. And the door flies open, and Charles Manson's love child comes to the door. This guy is exactly what he said. You get to heaven, ask God for the DVD. Here's exactly what it was. Here's Brad. This is that guy. Looked like a wolf man. He said, my girlfriend left me. I'm out of cigarettes. I'm hungover and my lawn rent's due. What do you want? And Brad went like that. He looked at me, backed up, stepped down a step, looked at him. He was backing away. To me, you let go of the wheel, that means I get to drive. I went up, I said, what you're saying is, you're having a horrible day. And I shook his hand. And he said, well, yeah. We had a 45-minute Bible study right there on the step. Brad told me when we left that day, I never want to knock another door as long as I live. Well, who was right? I'm going to be asked this question quite a bit. Who was right? The flaming evangelist or the flaming servant? The answer is yes. It's yes. There's not right or wrong. Your feelings are real. How you feel about something. The guy didn't become a Christian as far as I know because he got evicted. I don't know where he went. But we have to be able to evaluate if we're going to do something. Encouraging. We're commanded to encourage. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 11. Therefore encourage one another. That's imperative. That means like, well, you know, I do have the option. No, you don't have the option. We're supposed to encourage. That word encourage, when we cover the encourager, is to put courage in. To put courage in, like the cowardly lion. Oh, I wish I had courage. That's what our job is. Here's some courage. I'll put it in you. We're commanded to do it. If you don't know spiritual giftedness, the odds of you encouraging somebody proper, it's not going to occur. I want to tell you about Ann Bauer. We're going to take a break here after this next point for 10 minutes. You can go get refreshed. You can go get a drink of water, whatever. But then we'll continue on with the other part of it. But encouraging. There's this little tiny lady. Widow. She was a widow woman later on, but Ann Bauer is her name. When I point out her height for a reason. She was 4'8". Little tiny. She was number 1 servant. Number 2, giver. Number 3, encourager. And they were all tied. She was like a big ball of encouragement. And her husband, Jack, had a stroke. We had Bible study at her place for 12 years before she died. I got to know her really well. And she was always like, you'd go up to the door, she'd say, how you doing, Doug? She'd walk like that. How you doing? Come on in, you know. Well, her husband, Jack, who had a stroke, had one of those chairs that go up, and then you grab something. And she didn't want her husband going to a nursing home. She'd slide that chair out, push that wheelchair underneath, transfer. She had a whole system. Well, Jack fell on her one day, and she had to call 911 to get him off. And she tore her retina, and after she had the surgery on, she came down with flu. She was not feeling well at all. So we showed up for the Tuesday study, knocked on the door, a couple guys and me. We go up there, and she comes to the door. She looks like death warmed over on a cold plate. Hi, Doug. How you doing? Now, I was going to cover this particular lesson. But if I want to encourage her, I whipped together the biggest quick batch of encouragement, servant, giver that I could ever imagine. I said, well, let's just come in. We'll talk about 5 minutes, encourage you, have a prayer for you, and go. We were there about 5 minutes. And just in that time, she got so excited. You know what? We need to be sacrificial. We need to be given. We need to be serving one another. We're going to pray God heals you so that you can do what you do best, Miss Ann. She was so pumped up. That's why I told you your height. When she sat down, her feet didn't touch. Okay? So when she stood up, she dropped down. She punched the table. She said, you tell him, Doug. You tell him. She was so excited about that. She was walking, had her hand up on my back. Well, I'm sure glad you came in today, Doug. Why was she so excited? If I would have gone in there and waxed eloquently on the Greek tense of a verb or something deeper in teaching that she wasn't high in, that would have made it worse. But because I spoke her language, she was encouraged. How many times do we try to not speak somebody's language? And it took me a long time to learn Canadian. It did. Eh? No, but if you go to Romania, you go to India that has 500 dialects. They got Hindi. They even speak some English. If you ever go somewhere, don't you feel lost when you're the only one speaking your language? How can you encourage anybody if you go up to them and you go, du next is mine? Aren't you encouraged? No, you're not. You're thinking, what did he just say? I hope I didn't say something in your native tongue. I don't think I did. You encourage people. And the last one. Oh yeah, let me tell you about Chris Fry. You know, if you speak their language, you can encourage people. The encouraged encourager. Let me tell you about Chris Fry. Chris Fry was a young convert, a Christian Catholic. Or not Christian Catholic, a Credo Catholic. Like 10 generations he could trace back. He converted. Teaching was his lowest score. I mean, he did not want to ever teach. We were doing small group Bible studies, and I asked him, I said, Chris, you've been a Christian now for a year? It's time you teach a class. Oh, how do you think he reacted? Oh, no, I don't want to teach. I like coming to class. I don't want to teach. I said, well, Chris, you did let me finish. I want you to teach a lesson on how to be encouraging to other people. Well, you didn't say that. You know the lesson that he taught? We streamed it to Broad Top Church of Christ. To this day, 8 years later, they still say that was the best lesson they ever had for Bible study. From a man, that was his first lesson. Why? Because he understands that. Let's cover another one. Equipping. We're told in Ephesians, one of the key verses on the gifts, we're told in the book of Ephesians that it's for the equipping of the saints for the work of service, to the building up of the body of Christ. That's why he gives these gifts. That we're to be equipping people. To be equipping people. You remember David in 1 Samuel chapter 17, 38 through 40? Saul said to him, oh, I'll tell you what, why don't you take my armor? David was a stone slinger. And he got in that armor and waddled around. He said, this ain't been tested. He was ill-equipped at that point. Do you think David would have won had he worn Saul's armor? No. When he said, thou comest to me with a sword and a shield and a spear, but I come unto thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defined, 5 flat stones, took one of them, launched it right in Goliath's head. He was equipped with what God said he could take a giant out with. We got to equip people. We got to build up talent with that passion. Do you know things that you're passionate about you never burn out of? You don't. How do you spell job? Anybody know how to spell job? What's that?
Just over broke.
Oh, okay. Just over broke. That's an acronym now. Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth, right? Now, job, J-O-B. How do you spell Job? J-O-B. 2 different words. If you have a job that you really enjoy, it doesn't matter how much it pays. You'll never tire of it. You'll become an expert at it. But if you have a job that you absolutely despise, it starts to sound like Job when you hear it. I got to go to my Job, covered with boils from his head to his toes. I want to tell you a story about equipping. We're to bring the church to the fullness of Christ. There we go. There was a lady in Manchester, New Hampshire. She was 67 years old. I did the seminar there about 14 years ago. She came up to me on Sunday after church, having attended the entire seminar. She pulled me aside. She said, I want to talk with you. She took me aside in the vestibule, and she started crying. I said, what's wrong, sister? She said, all these years when they go out knocking doors, that they'd knock these doors and have to go study with people, I didn't realize why I didn't really get into that. And I thought I was less of a Christian. But those are my 2 lowest scores. I'm a flaming servant. She said, I'm going to custom design a ministry for me to excel. And I'm so excited. I've been a Christian now for more than 4 decades, and I finally have the joy God wants me to have. Here's what this lady did. Here's what her evangelism looked like. She made these cookies. She'd wrap them up. She'd go through the neighborhood, tie them with a little sticker. Manchester Church of Christ wants to invite you.
Amen.
And you know what? A lot of people started coming. Where's that lady who made those cookies? And then they would go ahead and convert after they were studied with. You see, God doesn't save us to waste. He saves us with a purpose. When we come back from the break, we have a song we sing, "Mold me and make me after thy will." We're going to cover, now those are the 5 corporate reasons why, as a church, you want to be acutely aware of spiritual gifts. But I'm going to give you 8 personal reasons when we come back. 8 personal reasons why you never want to forget what we're covering. Let's go ahead and take a quick break. How about we meet back here in 5 minutes, okay?